I'm back, Biffy.
On to opioids puts your family at risk. Learn more at www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
Hello, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm the Storm Tracker, Darnell Foster, with a look at your local weather forecast for your start to the work week. Mostly cloudy, a few scattered showers, daytime high near 63. Overnight low of 46 degrees, under mostly cloudy skies with periods of rain. We'll see a drier Tuesday under a mix of sun and clouds. Temperatures near 70 for the daytime high. Have yourself a great day, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe and Brad Leonard behind the board in the producer's chair.
And my second cup of hazelnut coffee here for this dark and dreary Monday morning. Still 49 degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. It's good coffee. 49 at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, 49 degrees here at my home studios in Umbro, 49 at the Robinson Auto Group Studios, downtown Wheeling, in the heart of the Ohio Valley. It is dark and dreary. It's going to be that way a good bit of the day today. This was a fascinating legislative session in West Virginia. Maybe fascinating is the right word to use. I'm not sure. It was depressing in some ways as well. Finally came to an end of this weekend. The weekend itself was interesting. And we're going to recap the weekend and recap the session. Later on, Brad McElhenney joins us from Metro News. In a minute here, we'll talk to Senator Ehlenfeld about his thoughts on it. Governor Justice says he's going to barnstorm the state to support his tax increase plan. I sincerely hope if he's going to go traveling the roadways of the great mountain state that he takes note of where all the potholes are, because we sure have got a lot of them. Elsewhere in national news, a Texas Republican wants the Lone Star State to secede from the Union. An Alabama official denied a sex scandal until audio tape showed up. And then it was a big, oopsie. Donald Trump, oopsie. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. Why do you when you know something is true, why do you categorically deny it? Tap dance, I get it. Distract, I get it. You don't want to admit it, I get it. But when you know it's true, why do you categorically deny it? Because you know you're going to get caught. And we'll get into that later on. Donald Trump repeats his big lie about the election, and he wildly insults Mitch McConnell and others at a Mar-a-Lago fundraiser. COVID cases still on the rise as vaccinations increase. Northern Panhandle counties have moved from green down to yellow, so we're keeping a close eye on that. All of this coming up this morning here on the show, but let's talk about this legislative session. To help me do that, State Senator Bill Ehlenfeld is here. Bill, welcome home, as I say. Good to have you back. And do you feel like you're out of the swamp?
I did. That's a good way to put it. It's been about 36 hours since the session concluded, and I didn't get much sleep over the days leading up to it, and of course, I certainly didn't get much sleep between Saturday night and Sunday morning. But I got a good night's rest last night, and I'm starting to reflect upon what happened and what didn't happen. And as you and I have communicated via email, some of the best things, in my opinion, that came out of the session were bills that didn't actually pass, that policies that won't become law, at least not right now, until the governor barnstorms the state and calls us back into special session on that income tax proposal. But it is a very swampy place, and there are a lot of things that go on behind closed doors that nobody sees, that I don't see even as a legislator, but then changes happen out on the floor. For example, the broadband bill. We made a really good amendment to the bill that would have enhanced protections for consumers as it pertains to broadband service. And then a couple hours later, we come back on the floor and it's reconsidered and it's defeated. And in between that time, the broadband lobbyists were working the phones, working the hallways, and convincing some legislators to change their minds. So there's a lot that goes on down there that is really icky, is the best way I can put it, and it's good to be home and away from it for a while.
I want to come back to the broadband bill in just a second, but just sort of in general what you just said. You said things went on behind closed doors. More doors were closed this year than I have ever seen before, because literally the State House was closed. Yeah,
so literally doors were closed. People couldn't get in. They couldn't be as engaged with the session as they were in the past. They, as much as I dislike the lobbyists that literally stand out of the bathrooms on the hallway where we have our Senate offices and wait for you to come out because they've watched you go in and they know you've got to come out. I guess I could just stay in there and wait them out. But as much as I dislike that, it really was closed down in that regard. Then the other way and there's a long list of things that made this a very dark session as far as there being an openness to the public. There weren't fiscal notes on major financial pieces of legislation, and a fiscal note is simply something that informs legislators how much is this going to cost us. And there's a rule that requires that there be fiscal notes for bills that are going to cost the state money. But the majority party didn't bother to get the fiscal notes, in part because on some of these bills, they didn't want to know what the fiscal impact was going to be. We even had the Senate Finance Chair stand up on the floor and say, oh, yeah, we had a fiscal note. It should be in your system. I'm not sure why you're not seeing it. Well, we went and looked and talked and asked all the people that would have put it together and found out, no, there never was one prepared, and they never asked for one to be completed. So just a lot of this doesn't come to the surface as much as I wish it would. Part of that's, it's my job and the job of other legislators to make sure we come on shows like yours and talk about it. But it's really a swampy place, as you put it.
And this year, not just lobbyists, not as much lobbyist input, but not as much public input. I mean, the very few public hearings there were, it was hard for the public to actually be involved. I mean, normally the citizens have a chance to be heard, or at least to hear face to face right there, maybe corral a legislator or two and say, here's what I'm thinking. But that was all not done this year theoretically because of COVID. And I do understand there were COVID concerns, but what I'm curious about, Bill, is how quickly, now that you all are gone, will they open the Capitol?
I expect it'll be they won't do it today because of the optics of it, but pretty quickly they'll open it back up. I mean, look at everything else that's opened back up in the state. The fact that they wouldn't at least allow some limited number of citizens to come into the Capitol just didn't make sense after a while. And that does make a big difference. Not only is it enjoyable to see regular people there who are passionate about a particular issue, and getting to see people from the Northern Panhandle is one of the best parts of being down there, that didn't happen this session. They also have great input, and they can really educate legislators. We're citizen legislators. We don't know all of these issues backwards and forwards. We have to try to become experts in all of these different topics. So that was a major flaw of this session, in part due to COVID, in part because they never came back around and opened it back up when I think they should have, and they could have done it safely.
Let's talk about the broadband bill just for a quick second. It was one of the two things I expected to see pass this session. The other one was controlling the governor's emergency powers. We'll talk about that in a minute. There was a broadband bill that was passed, but it was really more business friendly than it was consumer friendly, if I read it correctly, and it was hard to keep track of this over the weekend, but I think I read it correctly.
You're right. It is more business friendly. It will help to get more fiber on the poles. It will help companies to be able to use state rights of way to, just like you might see with electrical lines, to be able to get more broadband out to places that do not have it. They don't have very good broadband. But it could have been a lot better in a couple of ways. One, we tried to create open access, and we actually did. We passed an amendment to make certain communities, give communities the options to become an open access community. And so, as simple as I can put it, if there were to be a city like Wheeling that were to determine, you know what, we want to have open access, and we have the money to create broadband, and we want multiple providers to be able to come in and compete. And so we would have, let's say, Comcast and Verizon and Frontier and CityNet and whoever else you can think of. They would all be able to come in and participate in the community and provide service and provide pricing, and it would cause the idea is the competition would cause quality to go up. It would cause prices to come down, and everyone and more people to have access. So we passed it until we lost it because the broadband lobbyists were walking the halls and on the phones and got that changed. So that was a big negative to me. And so the monopolies will continue in West Virginia when it comes to broadband. And then two, I offered an amendment that would require there to be more honest marketing of broadband speeds. And so right now, when you purchase your broadband package from Comcast, let's say, you're promised speeds of up to 300 megs per second versus at least. And so what we end up with are speeds that might be up to 100 or 300 or whatever, but the reality is, and we know this from research, we end up getting much less than we are promised. And my amendment would have prevented this misleading advertising, and that failed. So it could have been a lot stronger for consumers, and there's a lot more to be done in West Virginia, but it's the behind-the-scenes power of lobbying, and it's money in politics, Howard, and there's a lot of money thrown around by that industry and put into the campaign coffers of the people who voted against the consumers. I mean, it's you can pretty much line up people who voted against these these amendments and bills that would have strengthened the rules for consumers. The people that voted against it also, you'll see them get money from these PACs that are associated, political action committees associated with the broadband industry.
Bill, as I said, there were two things I thought were going to get done this session ahead of time, even with the supermajority. One was broadband, because it seemed there was consensus on it, so a version of that at least passed. The other was limiting the powers of, well, Governor Justice specifically, but the executive in general in the emergency power business, which, the governor put his emergency powers into effect over a year ago, and they're still there, and has not done a lot of involvement of the legislature and so on. Going into this, I had a sense that there was a consensus that something had to be done, but nothing did get done, did it?
No, and I think that's what he wanted in the end. He give the governor credit and his team of lobbyists and staff for causing us to come out of the session without any change in what he can and cannot do. Although there was a bill related to federal funds that flow into West Virginia due to emergency situations, and there are some new restrictions there. So that's a positive. But as far as his general powers, to open and close businesses, to determine, when schools are going to be open and closed, high school athletics, the band, those were all big issues that we dealt with. Wearing of masks, just all the very broad powers, and arguably some, use of dollars as well falls into that. That bill, I think it was House Bill 2003, it would have really reined him in, and it came over to the Senate out of the House. The House really wanted it, and they came over to the Senate, came to my committee. I offered an amendment to make it apply to this current emergency. That passed out of committee. It gets out onto the floor, and all of a sudden things changed. My committee chair wouldn't even offer my amendment out onto the floor. He said he withdrew it, even though our committee passed it like 10-2. He wouldn't even put it out on the floor. And then there was a new amendment offered by the Judiciary Committee that actually expanded the governor's powers. And that ended up passing the Senate 33-1. And you're talking to the only guy who voted against it. I seem to be the only one who wanted to rein in the governor on the Senate side. And then the House didn't like what we did in the Senate and refused to accept the changes. So it went to a conference committee, and there was a lot of coverage about that conference committee. There were 3 delegates, 3 senators, a whole bunch of delegates out in the hallway. One of the delegates in the room made a despicable comment to one of the senators that ended up becoming publicly known. The governor talked about it. A lot of interesting behind-the-scenes stuff about how that happened. There was coordination between the governor and a senator to make sure that was public. In other words, when the senator from my caucus stood up and talked about that despicable comment, and I won't say it, people can figure it out and dig into the internet and find it. When that senator stood up and said that, the reason he did, Howard, was because the governor asked him to. There was direct coordination between the senator and my caucus and the governor. Yes. So he stands up, he makes that comment, and then within minutes, the governor's talking about it at his press conference. And so a couple of us thought that was really suspicious. And so we asked the senator, how was it that the governor so quickly turned around and talked about the comments you made on the floor? And he just flat out told us, well, the big guy asked me to say it. He said, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. it just seemed to be
I mean,
too
it
much of
really
a
was.
coincidence.
I can't use it on the air either, but it was a really ugly comment that he made.
Oh, it was, yeah, and the delegate's not denying it. No, I mean it was very ugly. Never should have been said, and about the governor and about the senator in that room. I think it was Senator Trump who was the target of this comment, but it was about the governor. But yeah, really ugly, and in the end, nothing happened. They said, well, we can't reach an agreement, so that bill dies. And so that bill that really had a lot of good things in it that would have not stripped the governor's powers, but given the legislature more of a voice, which is where I stood on the issue, and Delegate Pat McGeehan and the vast majority of the members of the House wanted to see just some sort of a way for the legislature to have more of a say. It all died, and we're back to where we were.
Bill, I want to talk about some of the ugly things that happened, but I also want to let's actually, and what you have listed in your good list, some of them are just things that didn't get passed, and it's good they didn't pass. But before we get to that, did anything actually good get done? Did any legislation of value get passed?
I think the zombie property bill is pretty good. That will allow cities and counties to move on dilapidated properties more quickly and allow communities to move on past these properties that are just a blight that kind of slow down progress in neighborhoods. The broadband bill is okay, but as we've already discussed it should have been a lot better. That's about all I can think of.
Now, some of the things that you think are good things, it's good because they didn't get done. Biggest one was the governor's pet project, which was the reduction of the personal income tax, and that really took an awful lot of airtime during this session. I don't mean broadcast airtime, I mean kind of sucked up the air from a lot of the debate going on down there in Charleston. But in the end, there was no way it was going to get across the finish line. Too many different, what do they say? Too many different chefs cooking the soup or whatever. It wasn't going to make it.
That's right, and that's a positive. As I told another media outlet, the bill would have been better for Ohio than West Virginia, at least where we all live, because I had accountants and lawyers and just consumers saying, we're going to Ohio. We're either going to move our business there, we're going to shop there. It was a tax shift. We would have shifted it on to most of the rest of us and left the top 1% paying a lot less. So that's a good thing. But the governor hasn't given up. He's going to call us back into special session sometime this year, I think, with a revised plan. And he's got a lot of work to do on the House side. I think he's going to have enough senators to back him, but the House is a big challenge for him.
Biff was saying earlier, Senator, we were talking about the governor maybe going on the road to sell his plan. Biff says, well, if he comes up here, somebody should take him to Ohio and show him how easy it is to get across the bridge to go into Ohio, which is actually a very good point. The Confederate Monument Bill got a lot of ink, but it didn't make it. It did not. In the end, it died. Correct.
Correct. Senate leadership wisely chose not to run the bill. So that was, I thought, a very negative thing, but at least it passed. There were a lot of things you listed, Senator, as ugly, and that's a great way of phrasing it. There were just some ugly, mean-spirited, just ugly things that were done this session. There were. The transgender bill was probably the ugliest, and the governor, disappointingly, said he's just going to probably just let it go into law. He said, "Oh, either sign it or just not sign it," and then it becomes law without his signature.
But he won't veto it.
So far, that he has not indicated that he plans to veto it. I hope he reconsiders. Not only is it a cruel bill, it also, as I tried to communicate to my colleagues in the Senate, it's also bad for business, which isn't the main reason I'm against it, because it seems insensitive. It is insensitive to say it's just bad because it's bad for business. It's bad because it's cruel and it's discriminatory and it's unnecessary, and it's going after an already vulnerable population. But it is bad for business, and we've got Virgin Hyperloop that's getting ready to build a certification center on an 800-acre tract in Tucker and Grant counties that will generate, according to WVU, about $46 million a year, every year, in economic impact. And the CEO of Virgin, and he has a lot of different companies, including Virgin Hyperloop, is one of the most pro-LGBTQ CEOs in the entire world, and that's Richard Branson. And if you look at their policies, you look at things he said publicly, you look at what his company stands for, he's not going to like this, and I'm afraid he's going to pull the project. But I don't know that anyone's listening to me. I stood up and said it as clearly and as precisely as I could on the Senate floor, and I don't know that my colleagues or the governor cares. This is all about politics. This is a hot button national political issue, and it all comes down to being able to use this vote. Anyone that voted against it, like me and a few others, actually a lot of people voted against, including some Republicans, they're going to use it against those people in the next campaign. So they're taking an issue that doesn't exist in West Virginia. It's not a problem, and they just want to use it to beat up on candidates in the next cycle.
Early on in the session, a lot of what I call anti-public education bills were passed. There was the charter school bill, the school voucher bill, what they call the Hope Scholarship. A lot of controversy about it. That's another one where the fiscal notes were a little bit unclear, but it could cost a whale of a lot of money if this turns out to be the way some people think it is. Those were, I think, those were bills of retribution, in my opinion.
Absolutely. They got back at the teachers who walked out for a couple of years in a row, and it will be a huge financial hit to the state and to public education, and it's going to put money in the pockets of for-profit companies that don't operate in West Virginia. They're going to suck potentially hundreds of millions of dollars out of our tax base with a public education system that already is underfunded. So it's bad for a lot of reasons. And then, of course, we've talked before, there's nothing that prevents the money from being used at schools that discriminate against children. And we have schools like that, and money's going to go to those schools as a result of that bill.
Bill, I've got to move on quickly, but I just want to touch like item by item real quick. Some other things that did pass. Finally, after years of trying, the Republicans got an Intermediate Court of Appeals to be approved, even though I don't think there's any real need for it.
There's not, but it passed and will open up real soon.
I thought the coal comeback plan was interesting. A plan to insist that coal companies maintain certain stockpiles of coal, but when it was suggested that in that bill you could also put some provisions to help the communities that are hurt by the decline of coal, that part of it didn't pass.
Correct. It would have just basically required there to be a strategic plan put onto paper that would deal with the fact that mines are continuing to close, miners are displaced from their jobs, and it would put a plan into place to make sure that they have new employment to work on other types of things where they can use their skills that they develop in the coal mines to do other things. And we've got a lot of money coming from the federal government, so it would fit in nicely with that money that's coming in, but it was defeated, I think, because it was proposed by a Democrat. I think it's what it came down to.
Isn't that depressing? Well, a few other items on your list, but I don't have time for them all now. I appreciate your effort during the session, and God, I don't know what next year will bring, huh?
Hard to tell. It's going to be an election year, so it'll be a little bit different, but it'll be more of the same as well.
That's exactly right. Well, maybe we'll talk again, Senator, but thanks for helping us out throughout the session, and thanks for the work you did down there. I appreciate it.
All right, Howard. Thank you. Take care.
All right. Talk to you again. State Senator Bill Ehlenfeld this morning, the good, the bad, and the ugly that got passed. Let's talk about some things that happened this weekend in Charleston, including that, I call it, a big giant middle finger the House sent to the governor. We'll talk about that and a few other issues that occurred this weekend. And we'll get Brad McElhaney's sort of overview of how this session went compared to other sessions. That's coming up. But first, let's check some headlines for you here on the Watchdog Morning Show.
The WTRF Channel 7 News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Now it.
Foot and Ankle Medical Association podiatric physicians are located throughout the state and have been serving the profession and the public for over 100 years. To find a member of the Ohio Foot and Ankle Medical Association near you, visit associationsadvanceohio.com.
Want to buy your own home but think you can't afford it? What if you got down payment assistance or a discounted interest rate just for being a recent college grad, teacher, nurse, or veteran? The Ohio Housing Finance Agency offers this and more, and our programs are always available for eligible Ohioans, big city, small town, and everywhere in between. Find out if you qualify at myohiohome.org. That's myohiohome.org. Home ownership, ready when you are.
Hey, I'm going to the kitchen. Can I grab you a Coors Light?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Huh. I never knew there was a zip line in my fridge. Hey, buddy!
Yeah!
You got 2 Coors Lights up there?
You got it!
Always brewed down to 34 degrees. With a taste as cold as the Rockies, only Coors Light gives you refreshment every time.
Here you go. 2 Coors Lights.
Awesome, man. Wow, these are really cold.
That's the...
Alrighty, thank you.
Ask him if he has any nachos.
You got any nachos in there?
No.
Just icy cold Coors Light?
Yep.
That makes sense. It is the Rockies.
Coors Light, the world's most refreshing beer. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. With great beer comes great responsibility.
There's a place where family and tradition are forged in the West Virginia hills, strengthened by the inspiration of a world-class education, where hands-on learning is encouraged and applied. A community where you will be supported and be inspired to support others. An experience that is more than just a university, it's a place you'll call home. A legacy you'll leave for generations to come. It's all here at West Liberty University.
Dutch Boy's new Platinum Plus paint with Stain Shield technology has the performance you expect from a luxury paint at a price you didn't. Platinum Plus is up to 50% more washable and stain resistant than a leading premium paint in satin sheen. Superiority ranges from 24 to 50% depending on sheen selected. Platinum Plus keeps your walls looking new longer. Menards and Dutch Boy paint have you covered. Go ahead, live your life.
Right now at Menards, get 11% off everything, including Dutch Boy paint.
Now, during the Jim Robinson Ford Lincoln Toyota Pre-Owned Super Sale, select from over 80 vehicles in stock starting under $5,000. Most are local trades, many with one owner. Hurry to Jim Robinson at the Highlands, home of lifetime powertrain protection. Now, during the Jim Robinson Ford Lincoln Toyota Pre-Owned Super Sale, select from over 80 vehicles in stock starting under $5,000. Most are local trades, many with one owner. Hurry to Jim Robinson at the Highlands, home of lifetime powertrain protection.
A serious injury from an accident can be just the start of your worries. What if you cannot return to work? How do you take care of your family if you're disabled? At Gelner Law Offices, we represent seriously injured people and understand their problem. We know how to get you fair compensation. We will work hard to make sure you get the money you deserve for your losses. Don't go it alone. If you're hurt in an accident, call us at 304-242-2900 or visit us at gelnerlaw.com.
We'd like to help.
Technology can be challenging for business leaders, but Omni Strategic Technologies enables your business to perform without limits. They're the only IT company the watchdog trusts. Omni offers IT managed services, cybersecurity and advisory solutions, backup and disaster recovery, and can handle all your hardware needs. If your business is faced with any technology challenges, the answer is simple. Call Omni Strategic Technologies at 304-242-7600 or visit them at www.omniperforms.com.
If you miss a part of the show or want to listen again, you can find conversations, interviews, and rants on our podcasts at Apple Podcasts or on WatchdogNetwork.com. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
49 degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, 49 here at my home studios and at the Robinson Auto Group studios, downtown Wheeling, in the heart of the Ohio Valley. A little bit cooler than we've had been during the past weekend. Going to have a high of only around 60 today, and it's going to be kind of dark and dreary and even spotty rain throughout the day today. Brad McElhenney is with us from Metro News. Brad, I thought sure you'd just be curled up in a fetal position taking a long hibernation nap after the session.
Well, I am, but I woke up long enough to talk to you. No, right back at it for West Virginia Metro News. I did yesterday. So a cultural phenomenon is the Snyder cut of the Justice League movie came out a few weeks ago, and it's a 4-hour movie. The Snyder cut is, it doesn't really cut. Cut is not the right word. So all along I thought, when would I ever have the chance to just set aside 4 hours to watch a movie? And yesterday I was like, the couch, the television, 4 hours, that sounds pretty good. So that's what I did.
I saw that a couple weeks ago, and just I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want to get to the legislature, but what did you think of the movie?
As I watched it, I thought, what really is different from the first one? It was a little longer. I found it took like a couple of hours to even get into it. They were gathering the team for a couple of hours, so it was all right. It was a fine way to spend kind of an overcast Sunday when I was tired, but I wasn't necessarily wowed by it.
And that's kind of the way I thought about it too. And as you point out, it was 4 hours, which I guess I knew intellectually going in, but they did it in different parts, and it just seemed like every time I thought, okay, we must be getting close to the end, they go, part 5, part 6. Yeah. It's like, oh my God.
I sort of liked that though, because it was a little tip that I could stand up and walk around or take a walk or.
Yeah, but I'm glad I watched it. I mean, it was a way to spend like you did a couple weeks ago. I did it. It was just a way to spend a weekend, afternoon. And real quick, we always talk about food. Man, it looks like you guys had one heck of a buffet on Saturday night.
I did not partake. The media seating for the legislative session has been up in the gallery, and after a while, I find that incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, it hurts my back, and so marathon days like that, I just stay home on my couch. Did not watch the Justice League movie, but I did have the Masters on, which was great because I could just look up and it would be like beautiful scenery, and I'd think, well, who's ahead? So I did not, unfortunately, partake of the buffet, which was the downside.
It looked like a pretty good one. All right, let's talk about the session. Over just your overview, your perspective. This was a little unusual, A, because the State House was closed, and B, because the supermajority Republicans really pushed through an awful lot of things without a lot of involvement from the minority party. But just give me your take. You've watched many of these sessions. What's your take about the session?
Well, it was weird, first of all. I mean, I'm so used to really being there on site and interacting with delegates and senators very directly, and the lobbyists that Senator Uhlenfeld was talking about. I learned things from them. They'll say, hey, did you hear what was happening up in Judiciary? And there was just none of that this year. And I really did watch a lot of it from off-site. I mean, thank goodness for the streaming. But the House was weird in the sense that the floor sessions you could see, that was video, but the committee meetings were audio only. So thank goodness I'd been there for years prior, because otherwise I wouldn't have recognized voices. I was up at the State House on Friday, and I told a delegate when we were making conversation, I said, it was so strange. It was like watching you all through a fishbowl. It's like a crystal ball, like peering into another universe. The Eye of Sauron. It was just, the entire way it went down was just very strange.
And you have to have realized, intellectually you probably did before, but you have to have realized how much you lose, and not just you, but it has to be true of the delegates and the senators as well. How much is lost when you don't have that ongoing daily interaction of the lobbyists coming back and forth, citizens coming back and forth, everybody sort of sharing, passerby kind of comments. You really lose a lot when you have everything shut down the way it was.
Yeah, I think so. And, senators and delegates largely spent the last year at home. I mean, there really were no interim meetings, but it did feel like the lack of interim meetings. So take the governor's big initiative, the personal income tax. issue, there was clearly not enough consensus to actually pass it. The 0 to 100 vote would give you, a hint. It would beat you over the head with a hint. But there were no interim meetings or ways really to get together to determine where the consensus point would be on something like that. I think the House had some sort of work groups and task forces leading up to the session to help them kind of get underway and figure out what they wanted to do, and they ran an aggressive session pretty early. I'm not sure other groups really did that, but it just was very strange, and the pace of it was, it actually was hectic. I mean, there was a lot going on with the income tax being the thing that got the most attention, but just a lot of bills that were significant and interesting and potentially could affect communities.
The 0 to 100 vote in the House over the weekend to reject the compromised income tax bill, the one that came over from the Senate, it really was kind of the House's big middle finger to the governor, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they weren't going to do it. I mean, they were going to withhold the digit that you just described. I mean, the governor said he had heard that the House essentially was going to table it, and that's what he said at midday Friday. That's what we'd heard too. That was really what was going around. It was just going to quietly meet its end in the House. No fireworks. So then the governor just went out and blasted them at midday on Friday and said, wouldn't you be embarrassed to just sit on an opportunity like this? Essentially called them chicken. Mm-hmm. And so they got word of it. I was tweeting it. I think the House communications staff tuned in and let them know what was happening. Delegates were in their floor session. They were doing their work. But word got around, and I began to hear, and others began to hear, well, they were going to have a reaction. And I don't think they would have done it, except that the governor talked the way he did. And so about a little after 2 o'clock, they received the Senate message, technically, that the Senate had passed that bill, and then stood up and said, all right, we're going to have a vote. And, I absolutely have never seen a 0 to 100 vote. I've seen it the other way, things that have been popular or completely non-objectionable. I've seen 100 to 0, but I have never seen 0 to 100, and it's, it was meant to send a message. We're not afraid to take a vote, and you asked us to. And the reason we hadn't is because you can see on the board. Well, the governor, it seems, I thought he'd be mad. I guess he was. He took a while to react. But on Saturday night, he said he again blamed lobbyists for getting up in delegate ears and said he thinks that a lot of delegates were actually in favor of it. I don't take that from a 0 to 100 vote, but that
it was 0 to 100. It was a red board. I'm like you. I've never seen an all red board before. I mean, it's hard to believe that he still can say, well, I think someone really wanted to vote for it. But he had told them. He had basically said, not told them, but he'd said publicly he felt they were essentially called them cowards. They're afraid to take a vote. And so they said, here's your vote right here, Governor. Here's your vote right here. And he got it. Now he's going to go out and hit the roads, I guess, huh?
Yeah, how's that going to work? I mean, it seemed to be fairly effective on roads to prosperity back when the state voted on it, but that roads to prosperity vote, I'll give him credit for putting the work in and getting it passed, but it was a Saturday vote. It was a low turnout vote. It really wound up being, I think, 10% of all West Virginia voters. It's just the turnout was so small, but he got it done. But this is going to be, I guess, going around the state, coming out of a pandemic, trying to lure audiences and persuade them that he's got the right idea. Watching he's done that a couple times already. He's gone on the road for town halls at Tamarack and the Beckley area. He's done it in Martinsburg. I watched a couple of them, and there were small business owners who said, look, I'm going to get clobbered because your plan exempts me on the way I file my income taxes, essentially as a sole proprietor. Those folks would not get the benefit through their businesses, but they would pay higher sales taxes, and they would explain that to the governor. And what I saw was him trying to tell them they were wrong. I mean, good on him, I guess, for trying to be persuasive, but I just don't know. I don't know where we're headed on this, and I don't know, looking at that baseline of a 0 to 100 vote of people who represent their communities, I'm not sure how you get up to 51 votes.
Well, I think comparing it to the Roads to Prosperity sales job is a little bit isn't quite right, because most people want better roads. I mean, you begin with the premise that people supported the idea of better roads. It was just a question of, do they want to support the bond issue, the specific proposal? I think with this personal income tax, everyone wants to see their income tax reduced, but do they want to see it reduced with the additional sales taxes and so on? I just think he's going to discover that the public is just not in for this. By the way, Biff suggested earlier this morning, you may have already mentioned this to Senator Ehlenfeld, Biff suggested this morning that if the governor comes to Wheeling to sell the plan, it might be a good idea if somebody puts him in a car and takes him across the bridge to Ohio. Just
and that is the case all around the state. I mean, it's not that the governor hasn't been around and doesn't imagine it, but all those delegates he's in the end trying to sway, most of them represent border counties. That's just the nature of the district. So it would be helpful to get a visual, I'm sure.
Senator, let's take a little quick ride across the bridge. You know where we are now, sir? This is Ohio. This is now Ohio. So many different things done. Looking at some numbers that Stephen Adams put in his story, 2,039 bills introduced, 281 bills officially completed by the end of the session. Anything in particular, Brad, now I've got a minute left, but anything that stands out to you as really, really good or really, really bad?
Yeah, I heard Senator Ehlenfeld talk about the broadband bill, and there are frustrations about the way that turned out. Delegate Daniel Linville, a Republican from Cabell County, who takes a real strong interest in that kind of bill, is chairman of the House's committee that deals with technology and infrastructure. He had the same thoughts, frankly, that the bill could have been better, but it overall seems to be a step in the right direction. There's another bill that didn't get a lot of attention, but I think of it as the booze omnibus, and it was a House bill that is meant to open up West Virginia on an ongoing basis to the kind of lessened restrictions on. So if you want to order takeout or delivery of your favorite menu items, potentially you could, during the pandemic and on an ongoing basis, get a bottle of wine delivered with you. Maybe a mixer of your favorite dinner cocktail. It would strengthen the ability of cider operators to operate in West Virginia. There was some pushback from people in the legislature who are concerned about the role that alcohol plays in society. But for some of these restaurants and small businesses that are coming out of the pandemic that have had a hard time getting their legs under them, it seems like that bill would potentially be helpful. And for folks like Howard and Biff, it may provide some evening consumption.
Evening entertainment, exactly. All right, I have to run. We'll probably talk again. I wish we were over and done with this. We'll probably talk again at some point, maybe later in the week, about how things wrapped up here. But I appreciate your time this morning, Brad, and I really do appreciate all the work you did all session long. You really kept us all informed, not just here on the radio, but on tweet and on WVMetroNews.com. You did a great job. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Howard.
I'll talk to you soon. 9 o'clock, Watchdog Morning Show, ABC News is already in progress.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
A curfew was
All right, Biffy. I screwed up my timing royally there. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to try and take a break during Elefeld, but he had so much to get into. I had a whole list of things he sent me and just didn't have a chance to take a break, so. All right. Capital report continues through this week, and I may do one in the next half hour. Then I'm going to do I'm going to get away from the legislature and do some other stuff, but I may do the capital report first. Alrighty. Okay, that's it. I'm going to get some coffee. I'll be back.